Hello, everyone. I am very excited to have a special guest for you today. Um, Most of you already know me, but I am Wendy Gordon, mental and spiritual health guide. And I reached out to Michele Molitor after learning about her amazing work. Among many other credentials, Michele is a certified Reiki master, hypnotherapist, professionally certified coach. The list just goes on, rapid transformational therapist. But the reason that I reached out to Michele is that she has co-authored with Tom Collins a book that grabbed my attention. She's holding it up now. I Am Perfectly Flawsome: How Embracing Imperfection Can Increase
Makes
Your
us
Confidence.
better.
Yes, makes us
Yes.
better. Exactly. So as soon as I saw that title, I was like, this is a book for me, number one. And number two, I think my audience will be as eager to hear her wisdom as I am. So thank you for agreeing to be here, Michele.
My sincere pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Wendy.
Sure. So why don't we start just by telling me how you define perfectly flawsome and what inspired you to co-write this book?
Sure. So we define perfectly flawsome as we are all flawed and awesome all at the same time, right? Tara Banks coined the term many moons ago. And my co-author, Tom, he had first approached me with the title of the book, I Am Flawsome, and or perfectly flawsome, and I was like, "Oh, I love that." And bless him, he thought he had coined it. I was like, "Oh, Tom, I'm sorry, but Tara Banks beat you to the point." He's like, "Oh, darn." Tom's a retired lawyer. Um but the whole book is based on the art and philosophy of Japanese kintsugi, which is um taking broken pottery, mending it back together, and then painting the cracks with gold dust, so that the mended piece is thus more beautiful and more valuable than the original. So if we apply that same philosophy to ourselves, looking at our own trials and tribulations of life and looking at those as cracks in our history, but when we can mend them with self-love, i.e. gold dust, we become more beautiful, more valuable, more um, wise because of those experiences. And so the whole book is about understanding the the flaws that we all have and embracing those flaws with greater self-compassion and kindness, and use them as stepping stones in our learning and on our path.
I think that's wonderful. I have a very similar message in my own coaching and my own life experience, that, as you said, we are all imperfect, and that's not a bad thing. However, I am not so good at practicing what I preach. I know that intellectually, but in my gut, I still have those voices saying, "You're not enough. You need to be better. Try harder. You can always improve," et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your work, especially your rapid transformation approach. How do you help people deal with these deep-seated issues in a relatively short time frame?
Sure. So I call my work rapid rewiring. I've been a professional coach now for over 23 years. And all along the way, I've been a bit of a learning junkie. Like, how do we work better, smarter, faster? How do we get out of our own way to be the best version, the most authentic version of ourselves? And uh, almost 8 years ago now, I discovered eight, nine, I don't know. It was a while ago, probably 9 years ago now. I discovered a modality called rapid transformational therapy, or RTT. And it's a form of hypnotherapy that allows us to go in work with people at a subconscious level, which is where all the events of our lives are neatly stored away in filing cabinets, right? All the traumas, all the good, all the bad, all the ugly. And um, after doing the work for myself, because I'm constantly my own science experiment, it created some really powerful shifts in a very short period of time. And so when my teacher started sharing this work with the world, I was a big yes and quickly went on to get certified as an RTT therapist and very quickly integrated it with my coaching because coaching works at a conscious level. It works with your prefrontal cortex, whereas hypnotherapy works at a subconscious level. So by bringing these two modalities together, it really supercharges each other. And so um, I've continued to learn and grow and add new tools in my toolbox. I also went on and added another modality called heart healing, which is a different form of hypnotherapy. And so integrated into my rapid rewiring with folks is um, positive psychology, neuroscience, hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming, somatic therapy, mindfulness, Reiki, all of these things are kind of all rolled up together to meet my clients where they are based on whatever their unique situation is and the traumas that they're trying to release out of their nervous system. So that's fundamentally what I do, Wendy, is as I talk to people, I listen very deeply and I help them identify the root causes of those moments in their lives where they made decisions about themselves. I'm not good enough. I'm not perfect. I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy, whatever those might be. And at this deeper level, we're able to review it as if it was on a second monitor, right over there. Like, oh, isn't that interesting that that thing happened to me and I made this up about myself? Because you are worthy, you are enough, you are lovable, you always have been, you always will be. But we forget because someone somewhere on our path, somebody said something that that poked us deeply and left a mark on our hearts, right? On our spirit. So my work is about undoing that and rewiring, literally helping clients build new neural pathways through repetition. And I do that in a very particular way. As part of our hypnotherapy sessions, a client will receive a customized recording. I call it a transformation recording. It's mixed with binaural beat music to help entrain your brain with these new messages. And so, in a very soothing and relaxing voice and tone and cadence, you receive this recording and you listen to it every night as you drift off to sleep. And that's literally what helps build the new neural pathways because your brain loves repetition, right? Um, how many of how many of your listeners can remember the lyrics of songs from their high school days, right? You
I
put it
certainly
on like,
can.
oh yeah, I know that. You sing it all the time, right? So it's the same kind of theory to rewire your brain with new messages that work for you instead of messages that you're telling yourself that no longer empower you.
And I love that approach so much because it's exactly like you said, most of us work purely with the prefrontal cortex. And so I can have all this intellectual knowledge. I can even tell you exactly which experiences in my childhood and later led me to deeply internalize these beliefs. So I have all this understanding at the intellectual level, but the subconscious is a whole different ballgame. And so is the somatic stored trauma in the body and all of the things that you mentioned. And so many practitioners, focus on one, maybe two of those areas. And it sounds like you just bring in a whole bunch of different modalities in a very holistic way.
Yeah. I love this work because it allows folks to really see, like through a new set of lenses, literally helping them take off fear blinders they've been wearing for perhaps decades of their lives and sees that there's all these other things, possibilities, perspectives available to them that they just didn't know were there because they didn't know what they didn't know, right? If
Right.
you think about in our childhood, we're raised in whatever environment we were raised in. So if you think of that as a fish bowl, right? You're a happy little fish in your fish bowl, and your fishbowl water might be blue, mine might be brown because of the environment that I was raised in, the family of origin, etc. And I don't know that my water is brown and yours is blue because this is just all that I know, right? Until we start to grow up and we see new experiences like, oh, I have brown water. Ew. Right. So it's about shifting our perspectives and looking back at our life experiences like, okay, well, that happened, but it doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make what so and so said about me true. It just means they had unprocessed trauma and they didn't know how to articulate it. So they took it out on me, for example. Right. And that's
Exactly.
there's often this intergenerational trauma that happens, right? Our grandparents, our parents had their own experiences. Maybe they processed it, maybe they didn't. And so they're doing the best that they know how to deal with their own life. And then oftentimes those behaviors get passed along to the children.
Yes, that is very much what happened in my case. And I certainly don't have the subconscious skills that you do to work with that. But in my own work, particularly with spiritual issues, I'm a former pastor, and I work with a lot of people who are deconstructing now, who are raised in very rigid, fundamentalist, religious environments, and so they carry a lot of shame, particularly women. Around sexual issues and just around questioning God in any way or ever having any doubts or saying, wait a minute, this doesn't jibe with my lived experience. But again, I do all of that on the conscious level, and that alone can be very healing for people just to hear, hey, here's a former pastor telling you no. Here's all this other stuff in the Bible that contradicts this horrible message you got about not being good and being evil and all this stuff, and having to forgive your abuser and on and on and on. Um, but I love that you also integrate all those other modalities that get to the deeper feeling level, not just the intellectual knowing.
Yeah, yeah, because those events in our lives, they get captured as a snapshot in time, right? And we can have someone say something, we can see something, we can smell something, and it can throw us right back to that moment in time. We'll be six all over again,
Mhm.
right? And we don't even like you're talking to somebody, they send something, and whoop, there you go.
Yep.
Back to that moment in time of feeling not enough, feeling small or helpless or powerless, whatever it might be. And so we don't have control over that because our amygdala, the the fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain is just trying to keep you safe, right? I like to call her Amy, Amy G. Dalla. She's your
I
amygdala.
love
She just
that wait
she
name. Yeah.
she just wants to keep you alive and on the planet. That is her sole
Mhm.
focus, right? And so she's operating off of old instruction manuals. And so our job as adults is to go, oh, that instruction manual doesn't work for me anymore. It's old, it's outdated. But Amy will hold on to it steadfastly until you give her something else to work from. Right. So that's at the heart of the work that I do is rewriting those mental patterns and habits that people have so they're up to date. Oh, I'm a full grown adult now. I am safe. I have a roof over my head. I'm no longer in that place suffering from XYZ, right? And so it's getting your body to know that as well.
Yes.
Like, no, we are safe. Everything's okay. And so it's rewriting the nervous system so that your whole body knows that. And when you start to change the mental mindset, your physiology starts to change because your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest system can go, oh, we are safe.
Yes.
We are safe. And that makes all the difference in the world, which is why I call it rapid rewiring because we're able to do this and as little as 30 days in some cases. In other cases, it might be 6 months to a year, but it's not decades of therapy. Now, therapy has its place. Um, it's just a different way of helping folks process through things. And some people need X and some people need Y. It just depends on what you're dealing with.
I have certainly experienced that myself in my years of therapy. Different modalities at different times were useful in different ways. But like I said, initially I just had that the intellectual knowledge, and IFS, internal family systems, was especially helpful for me to get in touch with those the inner orphanage, as Dr. Schwartz calls it, all the different parts. It's not just, one inner child. There's all these intermingling parts, and we're not always aware of them. And so as I became more aware of them and was able to have conversations with them, that was really transformational for me, along with my own just reading and all the knowledge that has come out recently about somatic healing and the amygdala, and just working with all of it in combination, not just, okay, I'm going to have this intellectual knowledge and that I'm going to have this wonderful insight and be cured. It doesn't work that way.
It takes work, right? And it's not necessarily for the faint of heart. The work that I do is for people who are genuinely interested in creating change in their lives. Like oftentimes folks will come to me, I've done this, and I'm ready to be seriously done with this.
Mhm.
And I've tried everything else. Please help me. And those are wonderful folks to work with because they're really engaged in the outcomes and wanting to create those shifts for themselves, right? Some folks are like, "Oh, I'm really interested in hypnotherapy," and they kind of want to kick the tires. I'm like, "Thank you."
Yeah.
And I'm probably not the right gal for you because um, we're going to have some deep conversations and you're going to have homework. I'm not going to lie. But on the other side of it, you're going to feel amazing and so much lighter and brighter because you've let go of the emotional junk in your trunk that you've been carrying around for too long.
Yes, and it's so true that it's not for the faint of heart. I know certainly in my own experience and with pretty much everyone I know that has done any kind of internal work, things get worse emotionally before they get better. There's a lot of deep pain to sort through and emotions to process that we don't even realize we've carried for decades. But as you said, it is entirely worth it to embark on that transformation journey. And I certainly think it's ongoing. It's not like, okay, I went through this program and now I'm all good. It takes ongoing repetition, like you said, with the affirmations and the challenging. And since you mentioned the amygdala, I know for me, sometimes, despite all that awareness and saying, okay, my amygdala has been triggered, how can I calm myself? In the moment, that automatic first response when the amygdala is triggered, how do you teach people to get back to their rational brain that's been hijacked?
Sure. Well, when your amygdala hijacks your brain, it can take over your prefrontal cortex for a few seconds, a few minutes, a few hours, even a few days or weeks. Um, the the best thing you can do that is most immediate is just breathe. Catch yourself like, oh, I'm feeling really triggered right now, and just take a few deep breaths into the count of 6, hold to the count of 7, exhale to the count of 8. Because that longer exhale is what's going to help bring your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest, back online, letting your amygdala know, no, no, we're okay. We're safe, right? Um, so breathing is a good first step. Um, Getting yourself really present to the moment, like feeling your fingers and toes, identifying 5 things in your environment around you, like, oh, there's a bird feeder, there's an orchid plant, there's my cup of tea, there's my phone, there's my lamp, right? It's about bringing you into this very present moment because when you get triggered, your amygdala is zooming you back to some other place in your life
Right?
that's telling you you're scared, you're in danger, and you're like, no, no, I'm all good right here and right now. I'm okay, right? And so those are just some really quick things you can do to bring you back to present. And then one step further is just to be like, okay, what am I grateful for right now? I'm grateful for this cup of tea. I'm grateful for this conversation with you. I'm grateful for the roof over my head because when you're focusing on gratitude, your mind can't focus on fear at the same time.
That is so true. And with the exception of the gratitude one, which I have not done in the moment, I do it every evening. I have done all of those things, so I can attest to how well they work. The breathing and the, touching and just like you said, focusing on objects. So you bring yourself back to the here and now. So thank you for sharing those. So naturally, because toxic perfectionism is the major struggle for me on an ongoing basis. I'm eager to hear your steps, some practical advice for how to overcome that or deal with it when it surfaces yet again.
Sure. Well, I like to think of myself, Wendy, as a recovering perfectionist, right? I don't know, we're ever out of the woods, but you can like, oh, there she goes again. Hello, friend, right? I mean, even writing the book. Um, my co-author Tom and we would get down in the weeds in a chapter, and our developmental editor happens to be Tom's wife because their business is called Master Book Builders. So they actually help people write and edit and publish and market their books. I just happen to be on the inside with them doing this, right? And Yvonne would be like, step away from the chapter. You are done. It is good. You got to move on and finish the next one. And we would come back and make edits when we get to that point. I'm like, oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay, got it. So, some of the ways that you can help dial down your perfectionism is first noticing where perfectionism is getting kicked up, right? And how that's being triggered in you. And so, first and foremost, start with self-awareness, right? Like, oh, look at me trying to be all perfect, right? But if you can adopt the mantra progress over perfection,
I actually
it'll
have that
help you.
sticker on my computer. And since you mentioned writing, that is exactly where mine shows up most often is editing. I rethink every phrase. I want that polished piece to be, utterly as good as possible and and I can always think of ways to make it better. So it takes
Right.
me a ridiculous amount of time to write a relatively short piece because I'm never
Yes.
satisfied.
Well, ChatGPT can be your friend to get you started and help keep you create a draft, and then you can go in and you can tweak the knobs and dials with all the words, right? Um, the second way that you can dial down your toxic perfectionism is just learn from your mistakes. Like, okay, that happened, right? We all make mistakes. It happens. We're human. You can't get around that. So learn from them, take the lessons, and then move forward knowing what you know now, right? Instead of spinning around, beating yourself up, getting caught in the weeds. Which leads me to the third step, which is practice self-compassion. Like, okay, that happened. You were doing the best that you know how to do in that moment, right? It
And
is what
that
it
one trips
is.
me up. Let me just stop you there because it trips up so many people in my audience as well. Um, there's that saying, when you know better, you do better.
Hmm.
And so when I catch myself, doing something that I'm back in an old behavior or thought pattern, and that I'm like, I know this isn't true. I know how to check it, challenge it, change it, et cetera, et cetera. And yet I did it again in the moment. I overreacted to someone or whatever. And then I beat myself up for saying, I do know better, but yet I didn't do better. I'm still messed up or whatever.
So that's a great point, Wendy, because intellectually you know better, right? But at a subconscious level, which is 90% of your brain power, that's still running from Amy's old dialogue
Right.
and her old mental maps. And so that's why the rewiring is so important. Repetition of the new beliefs, the new mental habits and maps is really, really vital to shifting those behaviors. I used to have a very strong I'm not enough conversation. right? And I literally, and this was many, many years ago, I was driving all over the Bay Area to go work with clients, and I'd be in the car for sometimes an hour at a time. So I'd be driving in the car, I am enough, I am enough. I'd sing to myself these silly songs I would make up about being enough, being lovable, being worthy to create the new mental habits of, oh, well, of course I'm enough. Why did I ever think that I wasn't enough? Right. And so it's just a matter of telling yourself new things because your mind's always listening and it wants to serve you and it will do whatever you're telling it. So if you're telling yourself, I'm not enough, it goes, okay, you're not enough. Great.
And
But
it
if you
looks for
start telling
evidence of
it,
that, right?
right, I am enough. Oh, okay, great. Right. And then your reticular activation system, another part of your brain, I kind of geek out on this stuff, sorry, will start looking for the things that align with your beliefs, right? Um, Number four, set realistic goals. Us perfectionists, oh, I got to get it right. And I'm super ambitious and I got a high bar. I'm totally guilty of this, right? How many more
Yep,
things can
that's a
I stuff
biggie for
into my
me for
schedule?
sure. Yeah, my goals are always like ridiculous. Like no one could accomplish that in the time frame I expect myself to.
Right, right. And so like, okay, let's take a breath. Let's step back and go, to what degree is it really vital? I mean, there are times perfection is required, like in building airplanes and Titanic subs, and different things where lives are at stake for sure. But when it comes to writing an article, for example, or building a web page, is it a life or death? No, it's not. So you get to judge based on what those goals are and how you can dial down some of that perfectionism. Um, Number five, celebrate your progress, right? Um, when you celebrate progress, when you like, I'm a list maker, right? I got a long list, right? This is my list, right? Things to do. And I get to check the box, cross on, I'm like, oh, yes, that feels good. And what's happening in your brain is it creates a little hit of the hormone dopamine, right? Dopamine is a happy chemical, makes you feel good. So the more you do it, the better it feels, the more you want to do it, right? Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Those are your happy chemicals.
Mhm.
So by celebrating your progress, even with little tiny baby steps, that creates those hits that then says to your body, oh, this is good. Let's do more of that, right? So then you start building these habits of positive forward movement for yourself, even if it's not perfect.
Yes,
Um,
and again, for my listeners or watch those watching this video, I can attest firsthand to the power of those things. Obviously, I'm still dealing with perfectionism because recovery is an ongoing journey, as you said, not a destination we reach and we're fully enlightened and never struggle with anything ever again. Um, but I do daily affirmations. I both listen to them and go along with them with tapping actually. And then in the evening, I write in my journal a whole long list of affirmations. And when I first started doing it, it was, hard to come up with even like, say, three positive things to affirm about myself. And now I easily fill the page and it's kind of automatic. And because I do it every day, I know that I need to keep doing it because if something happens and I'm traveling or whatever and I don't do it, even for a single day, I can notice the difference. If I don't start my morning with journaling and tapping, and then I don't end the day with my gratitude list and my affirmations, it affects my mood and my productivity, even for going a short period of days without doing those things.
well, Miss Wendy, you will love that we created a journal for the I'm Perfectly Flawsome book, right? Because it asks you what are you grateful for today? What are some flossom actions that I'm taking today? What are some three magical moments? There's so many different ways to recognize your gratitude and what's good in your life
Mhm.
because again, the more you focus on what's good, the more your reticular activation system will start to look for. It's always scanning your environment for the things that you're telling it to scan for. So
Mhm.
if you're scanning for scarcity, guess what? You're going to find scarcity. If you're scanning for, you know, troublesome things, you're going to find more troublesome things. So scan for the good, scan for being enough, scan for love and success and happiness and joy, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things I've learned in my own just reading and research is, we have a natural negativity bias in our brains. So that makes it all the more important to be very intentional about noticing the good. And on top of our natural negativity bias, we're bombarded by social media and news, and it's like hard to escape the ongoing, this murder happened here, this mass shooting happened here, this war's going on. Take your natural disasters, take your pick. It's just, and there are very few. This wonderful thing happened today. Look at these good people helping, or just everyday heroes. The ones that make the news tend to be the criminals.
Yeah. One of my favorite shows for that is actually called Sunday Morning on CBS. And that's all it is. It's like 90 minutes of here's some feel-good stuff. Here's some good people doing good things in the world and some beautiful things and some nature. And and oddly, they put it on at like 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning when most people aren't going to watch it. So,
Exactly. I'm
um,
not awake at that time, but I do subscribe to some wonderful newsletters that are the same thing. One is called Reasons to Be Cheerful. One is called Good Stuff. There's a third one, but anyway, yeah, it's exactly like you said. It's countering all the bad news with nothing but, feel good stories that are true, inspirational people doing, amazing work, and, overcame their own obstacles, and now they're using their tragedy to help other people going through similar tragedies, those kind of stories.
Yeah, I learned early on in my career that your greatest source of pain is your greatest source of power, passion, and purpose. Right. So
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
you gotta take
That's
those
what led
traumas and
me,
turn them back around.
yes, that's what led me to the work I'm doing, and so many others who are publishing on Substack, or have podcasts, or take written books, et cetera. It's born out of our own pain and our ongoing recovery. We get to the point where we know we're still recovering, but we're far enough along that we can help someone who's still totally mired in the self-doubt and the pain, and thinking, everything is horrible and there's no hope for my life. And um, so yeah, it's very powerful. And I have found, it used to be that there was more emphasis on, okay, I need to see a licensed mental health professional, or and not to take away from them in any way. I've certainly seen my share of them, and I definitely recommend them. Um, but sometimes it helps also to just kind of have a peer-to-peer, heart-to-heart coach kind of thing with someone who's a little further along the journey, but who can totally empathize because they've been there. And some mental health professionals have been there as well. But there's just something very different about the experiences. So I have benefited from both. Um, but yeah, it's very powerful to connect with someone who is on the same journey, and maybe, a few steps further on up the road.
No, that's a great point, Wendy, because I've always said, yeah, I'm just a few steps ahead of you, right? I've learned some things, I've got some tools, and I'm very happy to share them, right, with people. Um, because we all there's a thousand roads that lead to Rome, so to speak.
Exactly.
And there's so many different ways to heal your heart. And it's just a matter of making the choice to go, okay, now it's time to ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. I was reminded of this yesterday, like, oh, yeah, it's okay to ask for help. And when we do that, then it gives you strength. It lifts you up, and knowing that people are like, oh, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to make a referral or connect you with so and so, or invite you to talk, or whatever it might be. Um, so let's see. So number six on my list here is limit social media. You'd be really surprised how toxic social media has become. It has done a really great job of of portraying everyone's perfect lives,
Yes.
right? But nobody's lives are perfect. And it's considerably impactful on our kids today.
Hmm.
Um, some of the research that we found for the book, there's 25 to 30% of teens ages 12 to 19 have maladaptive perfectionism. 25 to 30%. And this includes, you know, depression, anxiety, self-harm,
Yes.
suicidal ideation, right? So if you're going scrolling through your social media and it's creating triggers for you, stop it. Stop looking at feeds that are triggering those reactions in you. Go to the feel good channel if it's watching videos of cats or dogs or puppies, or animals. My personal favorite is baby elephants. You know, we all have a thing. Find the thing that brings you joy and sit in that to raise your vibration, because we're all energy, right? If you boil it down to quantum physics, we're all just energy vibrating in different
Right.
frequencies. And so do the things that raise your vibration so that then you can attract to you, because like attracts like, attract more of those positive things to you in your life,
Yes,
right?
I'm fortunate in that I've never been a social media fan, so I was never really a doom scroller. But it's been interesting to me in conversations with others, and especially on Substack, how many people are coming to that realization, and they talk about doing their social media detox. And I'm thinking, well, just the word detox, if you have to detox from it, that's a pretty good sign that maybe it's not a healthy, helpful behavior in the first place.
Exactly, exactly. And then number seven is really all about incorporating mindfulness and relaxation techniques into your daily practices, right? We talked earlier about how to recover from having your brain hijacked by your amygdala. It's breathing, right? So meditation is really pausing and taking time to breathe,
Mhm.
listening to the sound of your breath, allowing yourself to focus just on that singular action so all the head noise can quiet, even if it's just for a few minutes, right? Um, I recently was guided to start Mindful Minute Mondays. So every Monday at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, 8 p.m. British Standard Time. I'm offering 30 minutes of free guided meditation. It's a little different every week. Anyone is welcome to join me. It's free to register. I'll be happy to share the link with you, Wendy. You can share it out with your listeners. Um,
Definitely.
but
Yes.
yeah, just I had started doing my a mindful minute with one of my networking groups about 3 years ago, and it was just like I get downloads. You probably get these too, right? I get a download from Spirit, like do this
Mhm.
now. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
yes, ma'am, got it. Right. And so I started it about a month ago, and yeah, I'm there every week. And sometimes we have a bunch of people, sometimes we have a couple of people. Doesn't matter. We all get to pause and breathe and take time out from busy schedules to then reset so that you have greater clarity for your day and your week.
Yes, it is really amazing how just even a brief pause, how much of a difference that makes. I'm doing a 6 week spiritual support Zoom group that our first session was on Sunday, and so I started the session with having everybody take a few very deep, calming breaths, and feel the ground underneath your feet, and just center yourself in the present. Let go of the day's anxieties, whatever happened, and starting there frees people to be more fully engaged and to really be comfortable sharing more personal things because they're not starting from that anxious state.
Yeah, it makes a huge, huge difference for sure. So yeah, it's all about noticing where you're getting yourself tripped up,
Mhm.
bringing awareness to it, bringing some self-care and some self-love to it, and, you know, cutting yourself some slack. I'm going to do my very best today. I got some wisdom many years ago that kind of changed my life in some because I was so driven and so like I gotta get it done, I gotta get it done, and I had these lists forever. And someone once said to me, "You'll get done today what you get done today, and what you don't get done today, you'll get done tomorrow." I was like, "Really?" Oh, like someone handed me a pass. It's like it's okay to not get it all done today. You'll be all right. I was like,
Yeah, that
"Oh,
is
thank
so
goodness."
contrary to our culture's, overwhelming pressure that, busyness is a status symbol and, you've got to be goal driven and there's no time like the present and some days not a day on the calendar and on and on and on. It's like, right now you must do this because time is running out.
Yeah, yeah. My tagline is someday starts now. Unlock the power of you. Because you only have this now moment if you really think about it, right?
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
again, I like that you say someday starts now. It's not like you have to do it all today.
Yeah, exactly. That's not the instruction.
Well, you mentioned earlier that your other program is heart centered or heart healing.
Heart healing. Yeah,
Could
so
you say more about
it's
that?
it's a modality that I use. And it's like heart healing versus rapid transformational therapy. Like one's a hammer, one's a screwdriver, right? You use different tools for different situations. So, heart healing is also a hypnotherapy technique, right? And it goes I found it goes more deep. It goes deeper. Um, and it allows me to do work with folks so that not only can they get at the limiting beliefs that happened perhaps in their childhood, um, I'm able to work with people in past life traumas, intergenerational trauma, ancestral trauma that is coming up for them, and it's quite fascinating. Um, we have a whole chapter in the book on intergenerational trauma. So, um, how certain beliefs and stuck spots manifest for people um, can oftentimes be tied back to things that maybe they learned or inherited consciously or unconsciously from their father, their grandfather, their great grandfather, etc. One of the
Yes,
stories I
that's one
share.
area that's of particular interest to me. And so in my own reading and looking at the research studies, I was blown away to not only, about the unconscious being transmitted psychologically and affecting the behavior, but in the DNA, there are actual changes. That's what really blew me away. It's amazing the power of, like you said, it's not just, your parents and what they went through. It goes back generations. And so maybe you have no idea that something ever even happened, but yet it's in your DNA or it's otherwise affecting your life and it didn't happen to you, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The science is called epigenetics.
Mhm.
And what they found is that someone who's going through a traumatic experience, so let's say famine um, or um, abject cruelty, you think of Holocaust
Right.
survivors, right? Um, though the environment that those people were living in literally triggered certain gene expressions in your DNA to turn off or on. So
Mhm.
now the gene itself has shifted. And so then that person goes and has a family, and those new gene expressions are then handed down to their children, right? So, for example, there was a really interesting research study that was done on the Dutch famine in the early 1900s. And what they found was the women who survived that and went on to have families, the children, their DNA was more prone to weight gain
Mm.
and because of how the mother's DNA had shifted. It's far more complex than that, but it's at a very, very high level. So, I mean, it's just really fascinating how it can shift things for people. Um, One of the stories in the book, I talk about a colleague who allowed me to interview him. He's a second generation Holocaust survivor. And he has two master's degrees, but he was told growing up from his father and his grandfather, who lived in Germany prior to World War I, that if you don't have a doctorate degree, well, then you're just an apprentice. Like, don't even bother showing up if you don't have a doctorate degree. And so when he got his first master's from Johns Hopkins University, the first question his dad asked him was, "When are you getting your doctorate?" Not like, "Congratulations, well done." No, when are you getting your like, that's not enough. When are you going to go to this next level? And so that created some really toxic perfectionism in him for many, many years. He overheard his dad talking, I think, to his uncle after he got his second master's. Well, two masters is kind of like getting a doctorate. So yeah, I'm proud of him.
Yep.
So it's amazing. So just notice, for all your listeners, notice what's the internal dialogue that you're telling yourself, and see if there's voices of others in your family of origin that might be coming from, that maybe it's not yours. And if it's not yours, then you can change it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add, for anybody who's hearing this and thinking, well, all this is in my DNA and it's been handed down and for generations. And so I'm powerless. I can't do anything about it. The wonderful news is, yes, we can rewire our brains and all the new research is just amazing on the kind of transformation that is possible and getting the neural pathways to fire together. I've heard the saying, the neurons that fire together wire together, um,
Yes,
and
exactly.
they can be unwired and wired to different pathways.
Exactly, exactly. So, yeah, um, we can always change our brains, right? Yeah, old dogs can learn new tricks. It's
Yep,
just a matter of um, sticking to it and being tenacious about it and choosing it, right?
absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap up soon, but thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And I encourage anybody to go to Michelle's website. She has some wonderful free resources on her website, including a self-doubt archetype quiz, which I did and found very informative, um, and blog posts and all kinds of other things. And as she mentioned, her Mindfulness Monday. So by all means, just michellemolitor.com. You'll find a wealth of resources. And anything else you'd like to add, Michelle, as we wrap up?
Gosh, it's just been a real joy being here with you, Wendy. And for those of you who are interested about doing this deeper kind of work, I'm always happy to have a complimentary and confidential clarity call with you to see if I can be of help. And if I'm not the right person, then I'll point you in the direction that of someone who can. But yeah, it's always okay to ask for help and see what shifts are possible for you to have more of what you do want in your life and less of what you don't want.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been wonderful to talk with you, and I appreciate your willingness to come and share your wisdom with listeners. And I encourage everybody to get the book. Wonderful title and message, and just one that so many of us need to hear because our society and most of us from our childhood on have gotten the opposite message that our worth comes from our achievements and we're not enough and we can always do better. And uh, so thank you for your work and for sharing it with us today.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. I would invite everyone to adopt the mantra, I am perfectly flawsome.
Wonderful. Thanks again. And it's been a delight to talk with you. And I'm sure my listeners will appreciate your wisdom as much as I do.
Well, thank you, Miss Wendy. I appreciate you too.
Bye.